Hey everybody, you are listening to the History Boys. I am Christopher Whedon, and I've been worried, guys.
What?
Tyler, Jerry, are you guys drinking enough water?
Yeah, I think
I'm drinking water.
How much
drinking
water
right now?
Oh, I'm drinking beer.
I'm drinking beer.
It's a dank beer. It's like one of those weed beers. Smells like weed.
Does it have weed in it?
I don't think it has THC in it.
It's got water in it. Tyler, I'm gonna try History Boy here. I'm very hydrated. As a matter of fact,
Could you be too hydrated? Because that's where I was going to go after. That was my real concern. I was starting with the dehydration, but if you drink too much water, that isn't good for you either.
No,
I'm giving my kidneys a workout, man. I'm giving my kidneys a workout. And
those people who died at raves because they drank too much water.
Huh.
I think they drank too much water, but I have a feeling if they drink the same amount of water and took half as much ecstasy, they probably wouldn't have died.
They probably also wouldn't have had the driving force for their body telling them to drink that much water.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you guys want to go to a rave? That's what I was coming up. That's what this whole thing was. Okay. I'm way too old for that.
Yeah.
But all the guys are going to be there. There's going to be Rufo. We're talking Magnesium E.
Yeah.
We're talking Skazzle. Skog Bags is going to be there because it's a play on words.
Yeah.
Which reminds you, I was teeing you up.
Sorry, what was teeing me up?
Because I was doing. Aren't we doing Boss Skaggs?
I thought we were doing Boss Hog.
I thought we were doing
Skaggs, the blues musician,
or Boss, the main boss.
Boss Hog. I watched every episode of Dukes of Hazzard in preparation of this. Is that not what we're doing?
No.
Wait.
This isn't about Boss Hog and his crooked Hazard County schemes.
Well, I am Jerry Nash, your humble history boy as always.
It's about time.
Thank you so much for listening. Yeah, well, you guys were just talking. You were talking about we're talking about Boz Skaggs or something.
Yeah.
This week we're going to do a fun little series that I've wanted to do since the beginning of the show. We're going to talk about Boss William Tweed.
Boss Tweed.
Boss
okay.
Tweed. Yeah.
He's got those suits.
Yeah, he's got a suit.
Oh, he's like Kingpin.
Most people did.
Yeah.
Now, to sort of set this up a little bit, kind of give you an overarching view of Boss Tweed. And basically, in the years after the American Civil War, there was a place where all of the political power in New York City was kept. And that was at 141 East 14th Street between 3rd Avenue and 4th Avenue, otherwise known as Tammany Hall.
We've talked about this before, or at least
yes, indeed. We've mentioned
we've kind of rimmed Tammany Hall. Yeah. Like we haven't really penetrated it, but we've tickled the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. For our longtime listeners, this will be a great episode for them. There's going to be a couple of characters that are going to come back from other episodes.
From the dead?
Yes.
Like Caligula?
Hold on. Now, at the height of Tammany's power sat one man who pulled the strings, and that was Boss William Tweed. Always insisting that they were providing essential services for the city, Tweed's brazen actions and greed led to his name and likeness to become synonymous with corrupt city politics.
Too bad he didn't become president.
The real power was behind the scenes, you see.
Yeah,
the man behind the throne.
Yes, indeed. Now he's been portrayed in movies and TV, most notably by Vincent Price in a TV movie version of Up in Central Park. It was a Broadway play back in the day. Jim Broadbent in Gangs of New York.
Oh, yeah.
Played Boss Tweed.
Yep.
We're going to talk a lot of stuff about Gangs of New York in this. Not the gangs specifically. That's sort of its own episode. But a lot of that stuff that happens in that movie is pretty close to reality.
I don't remember shit about that movie.
The only thing I remember about that movie is Daniel Day-Lewis is like, I'm going to cut up that pretty face of yours. And Leonardo DiCaprio's like, no. And then the next scene, he doesn't really look different at all. And I feel like he's like, oh, no, it's in my contract. You can't fuck with this.
Yeah, he has like one scratch along his, like the outside of his face.
Cameron Diaz comes in with her. Yeah, it's like she has her god-awful Lucky Charms Irish accent. They both do, frankly. And she's like, oh my God, your face. Like, I'm so sorry. And he looks like the same.
He looks a little better, if anything. Looks like he's got a nice sleep. He's not as puffy, you know?
Yeah.
Daniel Day-Lewis really, he stands out, in that movie.
Yeah. That seems to be typical of him.
There was another guy that played Boss Tweed in a TV series called The Great Adventure. And basically, that was like an anthology series where every week would be like a different story throughout time or whatever. Yeah, Edward Andrews played him. He was in Gremlins, 16 Candles, and Tora 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 as well.
Edward what?
Edward Andrews. You'd probably recognize him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm Googling him now because I'm curious. Yeah, it looks, I don't know. He looks like an old character actor.
I was hoping that The Great Adventure was just every week, like, Boss Tweed was just like, here's the new way I'm going to corrupt things. And they're like, you have a funny definition of adventure. He's like, don't I, though?
The truest adventure is corruption.
Boss Tweed has also been depicted in Green Lantern comics.
Yeah.
There's like a Green Lantern storyline where he's like Boss Tweed's a bad guy in it.
He's also sometimes didn't those comics get like weirdly political at some point?
Yeah, that's the impression I got. In fact, Aaron Weed is actually a huge Green Lantern fan.
Is he?
He could probably tell us more about that.
Because he hates liberals.
Yeah.
Well, it's always kind of at least the impression I got was that DC isn't in our world, but they usually are way more like
grounded.
They're of the time that we're living in. Like there was a whole storyline in the 80s where like Green Arrow's sidekick was addicted to heroin and stuff.
Fuck yeah.
And his name's Speedy, which is kind of funny.
Oh my
God. It's kind of an
God.
ironic nickname.
Yeah,
but either way, but then Marvel comics take place in our world, but typically their storylines, unless it's something big like 9/11 or World War II, they're kind of like, we're going to make up our own stuff. So.
Oh, World War II. Anyway. He's also been depicted in science fiction novels, believe it or not, and an Assassin's Creed novel.
Oh,
guess which side he's on in Assassin's Creed.
Is he one of the, like, not the assassins, but that weird cult? There's
the
Templars and
the Templars, yeah,
the bad ones. I only played the newer ones where it's like takes place before there's Templars, so they call them like the cult or whatever.
Yeah.
They're pre-Templars.
Yeah. Real quick, let me mention our main sources for this. The first source is a great book called Machine Made by Terry Galway. Fantastic book. I've actually read it twice. It's basically the full history of Tammany Hall. If you're a nerd for Tammany Hall like I am, you'll love it. Boss Tweed by Kenneth D. Ackerman. This book is great. It's almost every shred, I think, the story of Boss Tweed. You know what I mean? Kenneth Ackerman definitely like put in the work here on this book. Great book.
I read Machine Man by Max Berry.
Where the guy gets the robot legs.
Kicks hands.
Now, William McGeer Tweed was born on April 3rd, 1823. He was a middle child of 4. He was born to a chair maker named Richard Tweed and his wife, Eliza McGeer Tweed. He was actually born in New York City at 1 Cherry Street on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And they were third generation Scottish descent. And the name Tweed actually came from the River Tweed near Edinburgh.
I was going to say, where'd the McGeer come from?
some naming conventions, they would name their kids, the wife's maiden name sometimes as a middle name. Sometimes that was how it worked.
Okay.
That was her maiden name?
Yeah.
Not her middle name.
No.
So Willie Tweed he's like a city boy through and through, and this is 1823 New York. So this is the gaslight kind of era.
He'll gaslight.
He'll gaslight the shit out of you. And this is he's essentially going to kind of like keep. I mean, it seems like because of kind of like the arc of this story, like the Civil War's gonna eventually come and go over there, and he's kind of like, I'm over here in New York. I don't know. It's just kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah. Growing up in New York at this time, he kind of led he led this group of like street toughs, because that's kind of what groups of boys.
What do you go to school?
That's how our podcast started.
They get together and they break stuff.
Oh yeah.
Create acts of vandalism, things like this.
Kick mailboxes off their post.
Yeah, hassle sort of people.
Yeah.
And he was always a big boy. Bill Tweed was, even as a kid, as an adult. He was a big boy. He was also very smart. This is something that his father saw in him. So Richard Tweed he saved up his money enough to send William to a nice boarding school for 1 year to learn mathematics and accounting. So he'd come back and work for him and do his books at the chair shop.
I need to get a good accountant real cheap.
Yeah,
I guess
right.
I paid for the education, so. I also like that he wasn't the only kid. He's like, this is the kid that's going to college.
Yeah. This kid's going places.
You get
what am I gonna do?
Fuckers.
Have some kind of pipsqueak fucking accountant cooking my books for me? No, I want a giant one.
You got those big accountants?
I feel like I want
it to be a thing.
A big accountant sounds like a goon.
Yeah, right.
Somebody who comes to rough you up.
Yeah. He would actually also do the books for another local saddler, somebody that made saddles, right? And then he kind of got pretty good at this, and he's making decent money. And he also started doing the books for a paintbrush manufacturer that they all, like him, William, his brother, and his dad were all like investors in this business, so they all like sunk their own money into it. It paid back. They did their books, it was going well for them.
Yeah, he was cooking books from an early age. When you say doing the books, I'm just like, cooking. I get it.
Yeah. Whether it's on the up and up or not, I'm going to call it cooking the books because it sounds cool.
Yeah.
I'm also fascinated by how everything that he seems to be dipping his toes into is a horse-adjacent business. Because those paintbrushes weren't nylon. Not back then.
Yeah, right?
He's got the saddles. He's got the hair.
I just can't imagine that a giant, New York-raised Lower East Side kid who is doing the books is on the up and up at all. You know what I'm saying? He's like, come now, I'll do your books, I don't do voices, but that's just...
Well, what he really learned is just how business works and just how the flow of money and all of that really works and how it jives together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't understand.
Pretty much learned that from a young age. Yeah.
You put your revenue into the profit cycle and you wait for the next quarter for your returns.
Yeah.
It's about the profits.
Yeah. So when he was only in his 20s, he was a moderately successful businessman, So much so that on September 29th, 1844, he married his sweetheart, is what they called her, Mary Jane C. Skaden.
Oh.
She was 21. She was 17. It's not quite as bad as some of the others we've talked about.
Oh, no. Not even a little.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, historically, that's actually quite reasonable. I mean,
Right, exactly.
If I knew somebody doing it net today, I'd be like, maybe wait a year.
Yeah.
What? And you can read all about her experiences in her autobiography, Skating By.
I don't know why those kind of jokes are so funny. Like someone's autobiography is a bad pun on their name.
Having a name that is apropos for having like a pun name is from a young age. You're like, well, I better be important enough to have like a memoir or an autobiography.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this is just going to go to waste.
Yeah. They actually they lived with her family until they had their first child, and then they actually moved out. So for like 2 years, they lived with her family. Now, often, he would recount a story about the first time he ever voted. It was like one of his favorite stories to tell. Like, people would laugh, and he would laugh, right? Now, let me tell you the story, and when we get further in this story, you're going to realize why everyone was laughing, including him. The year was 1844, and it was a presidential election year, and it was a really close race between the Whig candidate Henry Clay and the Democrat James K. Polk.
We know who won.
Yeah,
the one I've heard of.
Yeah, Polk. Yeah, he was the Manifest Destiny guy. That was his whole thing. That was his slogan. He said that he witnessed just blatant ballot stuffing, voluntary or otherwise. So, like, people would vote multiple times in different districts or in the same district. Sometimes they would booze a guy up real bad, and then, like Edgar Allan Poe, booze him up and then make him go vote, put him in different clothes, and then toss him out on the street, Shit like that.
Edgar Allan Poe voted so many times.
Yeah. He witnessed outright vote buying on the street, like, I'll pay you this much to vote for Polk, that kind of stuff, And he actually pulled a poll watcher aside, and he goes, hey, what would you say is the average turnout rate for voters? And the guy said, well, usually out of the 45,000 registered voters in New York City, shows you how times have changed, about 8% stayed home. So, Bill Tweed is thinking, he's like, okay, well, so that's about 41,000 actually cast their votes, right?
So wait, 92% of registered voters actually went out and voted?
And it could, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that's amazing numbers.
Yeah, right. 8% stayed home. This is also, keep in mind, Tammany was one of the people that actually fought for land, like people that didn't own land to vote.
Okay.
Right? They fought for that, and to end debtors' prisons as well. So people that were voting at this time were not the same people voting at other times, right? Anyway, so but the point is that when the election results were published, over 55,000 votes were actually cast in the election, which is more than registered voters actually existed.
It's like 100+ % turnout.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
It was rough and brazen voter fraud, and it was pretty much assumed that it was just going to happen.
Did they do that thing where a bunch of dead people voted?
Oh yeah, they did that too. Like, that all comes from somewhere, right? Like, Tammany pretty much did it all. Like, New York politics did it all.
That was a real thing, but I know it from The Simpsons.
Yeah.
That's the first time I heard it.
Yeah,
I think that what's the Chris Farley movie? Not Black Sheep. The other. Wait, is it Black Sheep? Yeah, it is Black Sheep.
I think it's Black Sheep. Black Sheep is the political one. Tommy Boy's the car manufacturing one.
It's not even that great. I've rewatched it recently. It has a certain.
He's running for governor of Washington.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah.
But what William was starting to find out is where power flowed from. You know what I mean? Like, power came from somewhere. Like, it was distributed, in a lot of ways. And on a very local level, it was apparent where one place of power existed, and that was with the private fire brigades. We've sort of touched on this in the past. This happened in ancient Rome where there were private fire brigades.
Yeah. Talked about Crassus and Pompey.
Yeah, and Crassus and Pompey and all that stuff. Exactly.
Glauber and the rest.
Yeah.
The
That's
first
a real name. I
triumvirate.
wasn't even... It sounded like I'm making up silly names.
The same kind of things happened. You know, you'd have to pay to get the fire put out, right? If it's your house that's on fire. That, and people might take stuff out of your house when they're putting out the fire. Or two fire brigades show up at the same time and fight over who gets to put out the fire and lets your house burn in the process.
All of this sounds like things that would happen on The Simpsons.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. It happened in the 1800s.
A lot of the writers on The Simpsons, I think, were big fans of old-timiness, and I think that's kind of where we got it from.
Yeah. Conan is a huge fan of that kind of thing.
Of the old-timey stylings,
Yeah. He likes that kind of thing. Now, these fire brigades were almost glorified gangs, and they did have connections with, like, the real gangs of the city. And
Glorified? It just sounds like they're a gang. Like they're just shakedown boys, you know?
Well, not every member is like a member of like a real gang, but some members are members of real gangs, and they are kind of just a bunch of street toughs, you know what I mean?
And the guys that aren't part of a gang will protect the guys that are part of a gang because they're both firefighters.
Something like that, yeah.
Kind of like the way cops are now.
Yeah. And, well, the thing was the patronage system was in place, right? And it was thriving at this point. So like, this was like a great place to recruit, like your political, fixers and lieutenants. Your guys that would walk around to these polls and bully people into voting one way or another. You'd find them in these kind of places, in fire brigades and stuff like that. I mean, the same thing kind of worked with cops too, right? Like, if a guy did well for your campaign, then you could be like, well, under the patronage system, I can just give you a government job. Mm-hmm. So, hey, you get to be a cop with a good pension. Boom, there you go. And that, like, now he's a cop.
You mean I get a gun?
Yeah, and, every time I show up, you're going to go, oh, right this way, sir. Like, now you answer to me. Like, the cops are my cops. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, if you think of, like, and if you do that with literally everything in the whole city, then everybody answers to you, elected or not, Yeah. So we're going to get into how all of that works a little bit later.
It seems like a really good idea. Like, I mean... Remember when Anakin Skywalker was talking about how there should be one guy who comes up with everything? He's talking to Padme in that field about it. I mean, that's what this is.
Yeah.
This is exactly like Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. You're right.
Are there clones in this story? Clone army of Sam Neill's.
Yeah, it's a clone army, but they're all Sam Neill.
Yeah.
The audience has no idea what we're talking about.
No, I know.
That was before the show. I should have recorded that because it was hilarious.
Well, and they're not so much an army; they're an orchestra, and each Sam Neill in the orchestra plays a different part of the raptor. Like in Jurassic Park.
This makes no sense. What we're talking about.
One guy's got like a raptor bone guitar. Okay, you can cut all this out. We'll leave it in. I don't know.
Now, something you should also know is these fire brigades were also drawn heavily along ethnic lines. Probably doesn't come to any surprise to you. But of course, there was the Irish Catholic fire brigades. There were the Irish Protestant fire brigades. There were the German fire brigades, African American, Italian, and the so-called Native American. These, of course, were not Native Americans as we would think of them. They were people that thought of themselves as true born-here Americans because they were like from the Mayflower, right? Or whatever, you know what I mean? And they were like, we're Native Americans. And so, it was a big deal back in the day.
Well, I mean, they're not wrong. I mean, anybody who's like second generation, right? They're Native American.
Yeah.
But they're not Native American. They're like, we're nativists. Okay, we were born here, all right?
Yeah.
So we're more American. We're more important than you. Okay.
Yeah. It's like those vampires in Blade that were born vampires. Remember?
Yeah.
And they
there
didn't
you go.
Deacon Frost or whatever his name was because he would or was he the other way around? Yeah.
Yeah.
My stepdad refers to himself as a platinum gay because he's never been with a woman, never kissed a woman, has been gay the whole time, and was delivered via C-section.
Oh wow!
And he takes pride in
platinum.
it.
Yes, I'll give it that to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it wasn't
it's
for
kind
the
of a
C-section,
misogynistic take, but like, he's like 55. You're not
it's kind of hilarious.
I mean, yeah, it could be worse.
I just like the idea of these nativists being like, "Hey, Italian fireman, we don't like you because we're natives. Your son, on the other hand, he can join us anytime he wants because he's technically a native too."
Well, no, that's not how it worked with them though. That's
Really?
not how. No.
How many generations do you gotta have in order to like have it switch
you
over?
had to completely.
You're discounting their racism.
You had to completely assimilate to what they thought Americanism was, which is you had to be Protestant first of all, and then you had to be what they considered to be American culture, right? So no more of that Italian food, no more of what you do, like, and by the way, they didn't like the Irish Catholics so much that they wanted a temperance movement sprung up because they were like, they drink too much, and they were like, that's all they do. And like that's where all these like stereotypes and whatnot, because the Catholic Church allows you to do so, But that's the problem, right? Is people trying to define what Americanism actually is. So
basically, you have a group of people who are just allowed to do a thing, and then everyone just it's actually similar to a lot of like anti-Semitism, where it's like they were the ones who were allowed to handle money.
Yeah.
So they ran the banks.
Post-railroad Chinese Americans opening restaurants or laundries. They're like, these guys love doing this. They're like, it's the only job you'll let us do. And so we're going to kick ass at it, and then you're going to get mad at us and create stigma around that because nobody wants to go to white people laundry or restaurants because your food sucks and your laundry sucks.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they were forced into doing certain things.
19th century white people, man.
Yeah. Well, and modern day white people.
White people, man.
Let's not think that we're any better, honestly. Let's not think that we're any better now. There's so much of this has not even changed. So,
It feels like a lot of what you're saying is kind of like, all that bullshit we're dealing with, this is where that came from. This is where...
a lot. I won't say this is where it came from. A lot of that, like Irish versus Italian versus American versus Protestant. The Protestant Catholic stuff already existed.
I was more talking about like the patronage system and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah,
thinking when I said
patronage system. Yeah, that's where this was absolutely. Bill Tweed, Big Bill Tweed, as they called him, he joined one of the most notorious volunteer fire brigades in the city, the Americus Engine Company Number 6, or Big Six, as it was referred to, because there's this bright red, fire wagon, right, that had, on top of like its tank or whatever, there was a big 6 on it, and they all wore like matching red suits with like matching red helmets with a big 6 on it, and they were, they'd swing axes at like rival fire brigades and shit like that. Like,
oh yeah, they got shit done. They never once put out a fire though. But
if it's the inaccuracy in Gangs in New York, it's that Bill Tweed was still in the fire brigade when he was Boss Tweed, right? That's not accurate.
You can take the Tweed out of the fire brigade, but you can't take the fire brigade out.
Out of the Tweed. That's true.
Yes.
And up until that swinging axes at rivals thing, you're describing them. I'm like, who would like these guys? My toddler. Big red fire engine. They got the matching hats. They probably got a Dalmatian hanging out the side.
Yeah, dude. And
fair enough. If those axes were plastic and you're just throwing them at people, you'd probably love it.
Yeah. Well, and kids would come out of their houses and come watch them, because that was entertainment back in the day.
Kids love that shit. They still
they
do.
love that shit.
As Tyler was saying.
Yeah. And their mascot was actually a tiger that they had painted on the side. It was from like an old
Dalmatian.
Yeah, it was from an old French lithograph.
And it was on fire and had wings.
Well, the tiger itself
shot lasers out of its eyes.
It soon became synonymous with Tweed himself, and then sort of Tammany Hall as well. The tiger did. It like was attached to him later on. But, you know, they had this particular fire brigade, you know, they were Irish Catholic, and they had connections in some high places, right? Now, Tammany Hall, a.k.a. Society of St. Tammany, a.k.a. Sons of St. Tammany, a.k.a. the Columbian Order, was originally named for Tammany, the Lenape, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, headman who is considered to be the patron saint of America. So basically, when William Penn landed here, Tammany is the guy that welcomed him, right? And he was like also considered a hero, and then they considered him a saint because he converted, right? And they considered him Saint Tammany, right? It's anglicized as Tammany.
Yeah, they're pretty much like, thank you, man. We love you. We're going to make you a saint. We're going to name our little boys club after you.
Yeah.
We are going to kill other people, though. So
yeah. Have fun with those diseases and
and
move
here's some
off
free
of your land.
blankets.
Yeah, move off of your land. And they considered, you know, it started as like a boys' club, right? Like an Elks Lodge, you know, kind of a fraternal order, right?
Yeah.
And it turned into a political thing, you know, because you get a bunch of guys in one room smoking cigars, you know, playing cards and drinking booze all night, and they're gonna start like, you know, ranting about politics, right?
I know I will.
Well, and I'm sure over time, you know, more than one influential person ended up in Tammany Hall at the same time, and then they talk and they say, hey, you know, I'm in charge of this and I'm in charge of this. How about we rig it so we get to be in charge of more stuff?
Yeah.
You know.
Well, we'll get there. It's very old, Tammany Hall, but they called their leaders sachems, because of course it's named after a native headman. They called their members warriors, and their buildings wigwams. And it started as kind of a nativist order too, where they were like, we were born here in America, da 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 da. You know, they weren't always.
Any First Nations people in or around the building?
No.
They're not even allowed near the building.
No. Not even near the building, dude. Not at all.
So you take like, I don't know, like Gilded Age cigar smoking industrialists, and you combine them with like an Instagram influencer with a feathered headdress going to like Coachella, and that's what Tammany Hall is pretty much.
In a lot of ways, yeah.
Okay.
In a lot of ways.
I just kind of pictured that, like, if the Always Sunny gang made like a successful gentleman's club, that's what this would be.
Yeah. Right.
Like,
and I would love to do an episode just on Tammany's history. Honestly, it's great, or at least other pieces of Tammany's history. I'm sure Tammany's going to pop up again and again and again as we keep going. Even in Tweed's day is already long and storied, the history of Tammany. In fact, one of the biggest feuds in American history between Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton was loosely between Tammany and the Society of Cincinnati.
a Cincinnati situation.
Yeah. So remember Alexander Hamilton? He set up the Society of Cincinnati, right? We talked about this in the Cincinnatus episode, right? Yeah. To answer that, Aaron Burr kind of like, that's why he joined Tammany as like an answer to the Society of Cincinnati. Yeah, and
he's over there talking shit about me in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Not literally Cincinnati.
In fact, after like the duel and like, you know, Burr killed Alexander Hamilton, Tammany actually distanced themselves from Aaron Burr.
That's for the
They're
best.
like, yeah, dude.
Like
No one liked that, so
it's when he killed Alexander Hamilton. Even like it's that Fallout 4 thing where it's like everyone hated that.
yeah, everyone hated that. Yeah,
I mean, Jefferson was a little like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
publicly he was like, oh no.
Well, John Adams may have won re-election were it not for Tammany.
Really?
Some people say that. Some people say. So,
Well, most of what I know about that time period is from some musical you guys probably not even heard of.
Rent.
Yes. Tick, tick, boom.
Yeah, there you go. Now, there were many... There used to be a lot of branches of Tammany, sort of all over the eastern states there, but really only one survived, and that was the one in New York. And like I said, they used to be this nativist group, but what they realized is that for where they were, there were way more immigrants. And they're like, hey guys, if we marshaled the immigrant population, we could win a couple of elections here and get shit done the way we like it. You know what I mean? And most notably was the Irish, pre-famine Irish, right? And then, when the famine was in full swing and they showed up, they showed up in droves in New York City and all over the East Coast, they would try to register them to vote right off the boat and shit like that. That shit was rampant through all the middle of the 1800s.
Right.
That's so crazy. Imagine, could you imagine today if right at the other side of the ISIS border or ISIS, Jesus Christ, ICE border checkpoint, they're
vote.
While you're waiting to go to immigration court because you're seeking asylum from a country that's in civil war, register to vote.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If the Democrats had it their way, you know what I mean?
Well, and some people say that happens. It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It does not.
No,
they used to do that, but in Tammany's day, they did do that. They would register to people right away. In fact, a lot of people didn't even show up at the court date. You're supposed to show up in court and do an oath. And then they sign a thing and boom, you're a resident, right? You didn't even have to take a test back in the day. But these people didn't even show up to court, They were naturalized citizens and they called them illegal naturalizations, And it created a backlash, All of these quote unquote natives were like, what? How come they're coming in here and straight up taking our jobs? It was that. It was the same arguments you hear, only they were directed at the Irish and not, and not in other places, right?
As far as the jobs thing goes, I wouldn't worry about that. The voting thing, I do think, you've lived in a country your whole life and you're the people who live here who know what's going on can make informed voting decisions because there's no TV, there's no radio. The only way you're going to hear about it is based off of some guy talking on the street or some guy or the newspaper.
Yeah, which not everyone knows how to read.
Yeah. So you're fresh off a boat from another country and the first thing you're going to do is register to vote. That's I don't know, that's like giving my dog a gun.
Dude. Well, the way the Irish Catholics saw this is they were fleeing Anglo-Saxon supremacy, right? Because that's what it was. They were used as when we talk about the Irish potato famine later, because we of course need to. They were, they could have stopped it. There was a lot of things they could have done. They just didn't. They let them starve. It was pretty horrible. And the way they saw it was when they got to America and all these nativists were all these Irish are coming in here, They were well, this is just an extension of Anglo-Saxon supremacy because they're all Protestant. They're all English. We are dirty Irish Catholics. Because the way they saw their American vision was, they were like, these Irish Catholics, they haven't freed their mind from superstition. These are Protestants accusing Catholics of being superstitious. Okay, it blows my mind. But they were like, if you answer to clergy and to a pope, and you don't even read your own book, you know, or you have to have your own book explained to you, that's not freedom. That's not what this country was based on. You know, that is not American. You know, when people continue this to this day, they'll say things like, "This here's a Christian nation, and I'm not going to apologize for being a Christian." And it's like, look, dude, it never was. It was a pluralistic nation. And this fight has always been a thing. You're just perpetuating this fight that's always been a thing. It doesn't have to exist. It doesn't have to.
I feel like the people who say it's a Christian nation are the same people who are always like, yo, man, I just go by the Constitution. It's like,
right. It's not what the Constitution says. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, although many Irish considered themselves treated no better than a slave, even their leaders acknowledged that they at least had control over their own bodies and movement, right? They could still go where they pleased. They could still go to sleep when they pleased. You know what I mean? They had controls over when things could happen in their lives, unlike the chattel slavery that was happening in the South, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Still, the Protestant ruling class looked down on the papists, as they called them, for being superstitious and uneducated because they took religious education through Catholic clergy dictated by a pope, which meant that they had divided allegiances between the pope and their beloved United States of America, right? Which is antithetical to the idea of American life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right?
Fun fact, that's when my grandmother didn't like JFK.
Really? Because he was a Catholic?
Yep.
Yeah, see, it still exists.
She was like, goodness gracious, the papists.
It existed then. I mean, she's dead. But
it's got to still exist.
Though, you know, Biden's Catholic, and maybe in more Protestant areas you heard shit, but I've heard a lot of insane things about Biden, and people being upset that he's Catholic. It doesn't really seem to be one of them.
Yeah, I know some Catholics are mad at Biden for his pro-choice stance. But
I just think it's funny when people call him a socialist.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Anyway, yeah, I mean, the way the Irish saw it is, you know, why should they go have to fight and die in Lincoln's rich man's war like they had in Great Britain, right? In Britain, they'd been used as cannon fodder, right? Why should they go out and die in Lincoln's war, you know, for enslaved blacks that they considered, you know, it's like, well, fuck, dude, like, what about me? You know, that's how they thought of it back in the day. A lot of them resented pretty much all black people as well. They actually blamed them personally for the war that they were being forced to die in, and because they were also afraid of the newly freed blacks coming north and taking their jobs. You know?
It's so funny how, like,
it just
groups,
keeps
groups of, like, essentially, like, oppressed people in your society are turned against one another. You know?
For votes and power and influence.
Nothing has changed.
You're being used.
Rich people still do that. They just have more ways to do it and more sophisticated ways to do it. I think the rich and powerful race has never been part of the equation for them, except for a way to make different groups of poor people blame each other and fight each other. Meanwhile, they're picking your wallet out of your back pocket.
For the really cynical rich people like William Tweed, that's absolutely the way it was.
I definitely think there. I mean, we argued in our last episode that I think there are people who they don't give a fuck about abortion, but use it as a way to manipulate votes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a cynical way of looking at it. And William Tweed was certainly that way. There were people, though, that truly believed in crazy racist ideas, that Irish were like bonkers, cartoonish ideas, that blacks were a certain way, or the Irish were a certain way, or Italians were a certain way. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that hasn't changed. I mean, there aren't people claiming about Jewish space lasers and shit.
Yeah, right. That has not changed.
I'd like to think that the people with the most outrageous ideas at that time were just all getting they would all be getting their own special on Netflix now.
well, the real crazy ones were people like, Lister being like, hey guys, we gotta like wash our hands and shit. And they're like, what?
If he would have just said, germs? We gotta wash our hands because we touch stuff that, like, I don't know, Mexicans touch, they'd be like, oh yeah, you're right, absolutely, we all gotta wash our hands.
If it was rooted in racism.
I want to say real quick, I was pretty sure it was Marjorie Taylor Greene who said the thing about the space laser.
The Jewish space,
she said that, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
And I Googled her, and there's a thing, there's an article here I just want to bring up. Marjorie Taylor Greene claims tampon shortage fueled by transgendered people.
Yikes. Isn't her husband a sex offender?
Possibly.
I think so. Either her husband or Lauren Boebert's husband is a sex offender. Like, exposed himself to 8-year-olds. Well, besides, though, poor Irish couldn't afford the $300 exemption from the draft, like the rich people could, to mostly Protestant rich people could, to basically just pay your $300 and not go to the war, right?
I like that that's a thing.
That was a thing.
That's literally just, that's unapologetically, like,
oh, yeah.
It was a big plot point in Gangs of New York, where they were just like, all you rich kids are just going to buy your way out while the poor people have to go essentially fight a war for you.
See, now it's just, I mean, you can still buy, I mean, obviously we haven't had the draft in a while, but like, they still bought their way out, but it wasn't so like, you lied about bone spurs or something.
Yeah. Well, now it's, if you can't afford college, you can do one of two things. You can be in debt the rest of your life or join the military. If you're rich, you can avoid the military, go to college, and have all your debts paid off. So there you go. It hasn't actually changed.
It's true.
No, it hasn't. It's just gotten more, it's less like on, it was just so on the nose before.
Yeah. Right? It was so out in front.
You're like,
less hidden.
Mm-hmm.
They learned to say the loud part quiet, at least for a little while.
Yeah.
They used to be allowed to say the loud part quiet.
Yeah.
They called that the loud part.
Yeah, that's true.
Tweed, while working for this fire brigade, this Irish Catholic fire brigade, he got in good with some of these ward politicians. That's how they used to break up the voting blocks. I don't know if it's still this way. They used to break them up in wards. Tweed would be known for the 7th ward, right? But he got in good with these ward politicians, and because he was gregarious, people liked him. He was personable. He was friendly. You know what I mean? He would walk around town and remember your name and shake your hand, and like pat you on the back and shit. People liked him. You know
who should have played him at one point? I think he's too old now, but it's John Goodman.
There you go. Yeah. Mm-hmm. John Goodman would have been a great Bill Tweed. Now,
Boss Hog.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's actually his full name. It's John Goodman to play Boss Tweed.
Yeah, that's why he never did. He's like, nope, I'm not doing it.
No, no
matter how bad my mom wants me to.
Yeah. They wanted to put him up for election for city alderman. Alderman's like a council member. Right, city council member. That's basically what I'm talking about. He was actually defeated in a narrow race by a man named, and I'm not kidding, Morgan Morgans. Yeah, Morgan Morgans.
I mean, it's no Seymour Butts, but
yeah,
fucking Globber or whatever the fucking
Globber, yeah.
Globber.
But the very next year, he did win. He got a seat as an alderman. And
I think Morgan Morgans is actually a pretty good name to get elected. Like, it's,
people remember that shit.
Yeah, it's not that silly.
Yeah.
People are like, that's kind of funny. But it's not silly.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's not like Morgan's butt scrumper. I don't know. Like,
that guy's never getting elected.
It's unusual in how lazy it is. You would think it's like the parents.
Well, that's why I think it's genius, is because it must not be fake. They're like,
oh yeah,
you wouldn't come up with Morgan Morgans.
No.
Well,
but his parents were cruel. Yeah.
They thought on the birth certificate it was like, last name, comma, first name, and then they're like, fuck.
Oh shit.
And then so they just put it in pen.
Fuck it.
They just went with it.
Like, just don't put the S on the second one.
Yeah.
And then just call it good.
Morgan S. Morgans.
Yeah. Nice. Whoops.
Fuck.
Fucking like Lionel Hutz with his business card, just like adding a comma and a question mark.
It's way like Harry S. Truman. Yeah. But the aldermen at this time were actually referred to, before Tweed even joined, they were referred to as the 40 Thieves for their gang affiliations and their corruption that everyone knew was happening, but everyone just kind of, like, it was one of those things that, like, people threw out around election time, but there's nothing anyone could do about it, so nothing ever got done on it.
It wasn't for their love of the tales of the Middle East.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking, it was like, is Alibaba in the mix here? Or
yeah.
Somebody found a genie?
Yeah.
.com.
It's because people were aware of the corruption. There was just no way of dealing with it.
Yeah, they didn't give a fuck. You're like...
Now, the gangs that they were affiliated with were, of course, the gangs from the notorious 5 Points.
Ooh.
Like the Bowery Boys, the Dead Rabbits, the Pug Uglies, the Wide Awakes, the Spartan Association, and the Empire Club.
Sorry. I talked about it. The Spartan Association and the what?
The Empire Club.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the gangs from Gangs of New York.
Yeah.
I told you I don't remember shit about that movie.
Yeah.
The Dead Rabbits was the gang that Leonardo DiCaprio was in.
Yeah, that's the Irish. The Irish.
And his dad was in?
Yeah. I don't remember movies as well.
Brendan Gleeson.
Yep.
And the Dead Rabbits actually watched the polls in key wards while Tammany candidates were up for election. So Dead Rabbits were like their gang, Now, Tweed quickly rose through the ranks at Tammany Hall. He was elected, he was actually put up for election and elected to the United States House of Representatives in 1852. But he hated it, and his two-year term was really undistinguished. He didn't like talking about tariffs and things like this. The Kansas-Nebraska Act,
He's
which
like,
was
give me a
during
Senate
this time.
seat or go fuck yourself. I'm not doing this shit.
He supported the Kansas-Nebraska Act, by the way, but he was bored by, Washington, D.C. politics.
It's like being an intern in Congress. Being a member of the House.
He said, like, everyone knows I'm not a great talker. He used slang all the time. He liked to be like, I'm the common man type of dude. You know what I mean? And
he's an outsider who tells it like it is.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. That's gonna work out great.
Yeah. For a while it will.
It surely does until their policies ruin everything.
Yeah. And no one really realizes the full extent until it's way too late. Yeah. So he didn't seek re-election for the House of Representatives, which, again, it hardly mattered at all. He was elected to the New York County Board of Supervisors in 1858. This is probably the most important seat. Like, he held a lot of seats and wore a lot of hats in his life. But the County Board of Supervisors is probably the most important one that doesn't sound important at all.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that sounds like the least important thing in the world.
Yeah. The same year he became head of the Tammany Hall board. He wasn't the Grand Sachem, but he was the head of their board, right? So he had some power. He had some clout going on. He's got like 1/4 sage. Yeah, he basically realized that like sitting on boards in all these like different little like town commissions and things like that, and having a say and having like your fingers in a bunch of pies, that is how you get everybody on your side, right? Mm-hmm. Like you get literally everybody working for you, you know.
He's that mom. You know that mom that's like on the PTA and also like part of like all the after school programs and like just like really involved.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Anything to not have to get an honest day's work and actually contribute to the household.
Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ.
You know, it's one of those like Northern California suburbs situations.
Well, when he found out he could do this other thing where he could sit on the board, befriend people, and then be like, hey, let's get more board members. They'd be like, okay, how can that hurt, right? And then they would all be Tammany people. And now they could outvote literally anything, and it would basically just be an extended arm of Tammany.
I like how they're like, he's basically like, I want to get a whole bunch of more board members. And they're like, yeah, you know, more ideas. And he goes, and it's going to be all my drinking buddies.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, God damn it.
I imagine him saying, and they're all going to be my drinking buddies. And then they're like, wait, no. And then like the door gets kicked in and a bunch of Tammany dudes come in and they're just like, there's like a guy with a keg on his shoulder and like.
Trash in the place.
Yeah. Bluetooth speaker and a, you know, 24-pack.
Yeah, something like that.
18-pack.
Our ad.
Yeah. Do we still run that ad?
I don't, sometimes.
We could run it again.
Yeah. We
Bring it
got
back.
a lot of podcast friends out there. Hello, all of you listening. But yeah, like that's where like the all these commissions, committees that, if you want to get anything done, you got to talk to these guys. And, so all power was now flowing from Tammany Hall, right? Like all the power in his immediate area. And of course, when you can just hand out the jobs, you can be like, you're on this board, you're a cop, you're a fire, you can do all of that. People get a little suspicious when they're all Tammany people. So you throw in like the token Republican to be like, see?
Yeah.
You're like, you're right.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have thrown in one guy.
Yeah, right.
It's the reason why
us off your trail or anything.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's the reason why there was one straight guy in the Village People.
Yeah, right.
You're a cop and you're a firefighter and you're a Native American chieftain and you're just like a white guy. Like, I don't know. You got New Balances and khakis.
Stocks and bonds. The thing is, the Republicans had their own political machine too. This was the patronage system. We talked about like Roscoe Conkling and the Republican political machine.
Ooh, yeah.
They did the same things. Tammany was just the most successful at it. Yeah. They were just the best at it. You know what I mean?
They were the act to follow.
Yeah. Or the one to lose to, I guess, a lot. Sometimes in New York, because New York politics during like the Civil War era is so different from the national politics of the era. It's way more complex than people usually give credit to. Mm-hmm. Now they were semi-successful in getting their friends' government contracts, for construction projects. Your buddy your Tammany buddy has, a construction firm, and you happen to know from your buddy in the alderman, he's one of the aldermen, that they're going to build this building at this particular place. So you're going to hire that company, right? Because they, is a quid pro quo. There's another level to this, though. Mm-hmm. Because if you're the one signing the contracts and then, basically billing the city, well, you can charge whatever you want. That's what they found out. That there's what the contractor wanted, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's what there's what you took, right? So you would do like a markup, and then you'd keep some for yourself, and then just be like, well, city's got to pay for all of this, So the city would pay you to basically be the middleman, right? Mm-hmm. And it was just skimming off the top. That's how all of this worked. And they took it to a huge scale that even historians now don't know the full extent of, and can't exactly pin down how much money was involved.
I do kind of believe that if you really look at economics throughout all of history, all the richest people in the world are middlemen.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They do nothing. They do
skimming
absolutely
off the
nothing.
top.
Yeah, they keep some for themselves,
Or they're even like,
and then bill somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like people. Anyway,
Maybe that's what I should do. Hey, you guys want to do corporate motion graphics? I'll pay you $10 an hour.
Yeah, right. I'll keep the rest.
Yeah.
He also became a school commissioner. Along with county supervisor, deputy street commissioner, because he had some friends that were in the streetcar business. Streetcar business was a big thing back in those days.
The streetcar business was booming.
Yeah, so you had to get streetcar right-of-ways and
for
shit.
Streetcars at that time.
Yes, there was.
People didn't view public transportation as being less than. Back then.
Absolutely.
Now you gotta have your own car and sit in traffic for fucking 3 hours.
Yeah.
Well, back then, cars you had to propel with your own feet. I've seen the Flintstones. I know the way it works.
Flintstones took place in the 1850s.
Yeah, and to this day, I am shocked by the fact that it took me most of my life to realize it was a giant side of ribs that gets placed on the car and makes it fall over. I thought it was like a weird chair or some kind of like speaker system so they could hear the movie better.
No, it was ribs, dog.
I think it was when they did it in live action, and I was like, and they did the rib thing, and I was like, oh, it's also ribs in the cartoon. It's and it was kind of like, when you hear a word for the first time that you've only read and you've been pronouncing it wrong in your head, and you're like, I'm just gonna pretend like I knew that's the way it was pronounced all the time and be very happy that I've never said it out loud. And then
you're lucky
publicly on a podcast.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I like the theory that the Jetsons and the Flintstones take place at the same time. The Flintstones are on the ground of what the Jetsons are. You ever hear that?
Didn't they do a movie where that happens?
I don't fucking know.
I don't know. I like that idea, though.
Yeah.
Now, he, in 1861, he actually lost a bid for sheriff and nearly bankrupted himself doing so. It was a close race, and he just barely lost. There's still confusion on how well his investments were doing in this time. Some say, from family documents that like the paintbrush business wasn't doing so well, and it was probably in debt. The thing is that's why it's hard to tell exactly how much money was involved with all of this. And we're really going to get into it later, but it's because he had such a diversified portfolio that they really couldn't tell where all this shit was coming from, You're
saying he's really cooking the books.
Yes.
Money laundering and literally everything he could possibly get his money. Yeah.
It's
like,
it runs itself if you have your friends in there.
Yeah. You need to take the books out of the oven because they're done. They're cooked.
Put a fork in them.
Put a fork in those books. Yeah. They're done.
Now,
that's great.
William Tweed and his wife Mary Jane, they would have 9 children together the whole time they were married. It's a lot. 7 survived through infancy. 3 sons, 4 daughters, and they by 1863 they ranged from infant to 18 years old. That was the divide, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just kind of nuts.
That's wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And wait, how old was he at this point?
Let's see, 1863. He was born 1823.
Or no, yeah.
I just like the idea of like, hey Jerry, do math live on a podcast.
I hate that. I can never do it.
Yeah,
I can't do math. He's like 30.
In his 30s? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in my 30s.
Yeah. Now, I don't have to tell you guys that the Civil War was immensely divisive. But in New York,
to me.
Yeah, but in New York, it was especially so. There was the nativist, xenophobic, temperance-aligned, anti-Lincoln, some pro-Lincoln, anti-war, some pro-war, that were called the Know-Nothing Republicans. They were called the Know-Nothings. They referred to themselves, and other people referred to them as the know-nothings.
Because I was going to go, were they calling themselves that? And you're like, yes.
Yeah. Wait, it's
like,
so
I don't
weird.
know nothing.
Yeah, no, that's what they would do. It came from that.
No. It's that... It's like today where people were like, these kids go to college and they come back all liberal.
Yeah. Well, the know-nothings were deeply divided as well.
Yeah, it's because they don't know anything.
Well, between like the crumbling Whig Party, right? That's where you get your anti-Lincoln, nativist, xenophobic, anti-war stuff, and then your Republicans, your new Republican know-nothings, right? That were more pro-Lincoln, pro-war, right? That's why the know-nothings didn't last very long, and the Republican Party did like this juggle for a second after Lincoln, that we covered in Tale of Two Elections. We're gonna meet some of those people again. By the way,
I missed them.
Yeah, there was Horace Greeley was a liberal Republican, right?
Horace Greeley.
Yeah, and he was a war hawk, right? He was pro-Lincoln, pro abolition, and pro-war, basically pro-union, right? You could be pro-union and not necessarily pro-war, right? We're gonna find that out here in a second.
These are complicated issues.
Yeah, it's extremely complicated, especially if you were living back then.
It's so much easier now when you can just be like, I'm pro-gun and I'm pro-abortion, and those are the two ideas.
Right. Well, yeah.
Right.
I was trying to process what you just said.
What you said was insane.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, can't I be pro-gun and pro-abortion?
No. Well, that's a libertarian.
As long as you're not trying to give someone an abortion with a gun. Don't
do that.
I mean, it works.
Murder.
Kind of too good in a lot of ways.
That's your libertarian party.
Yeah. That's called the Libertarian Doctor.
And then you had, you had your Southern Democrats, of course, that were pro-war, anti-Lincoln, anti-union, right? And then you had your New York Democrats that were pro-union, anti-war, and pro-Lincoln, right?
Right.
And, they called a lot of anti-war Democrats, especially in the North, they called them copperheads, as like poisonous snakes in the grass. So the governor of New York, Horatio Seymour, was known as a copperhead, right? He was friend of the Irish Catholics, against the war, against Lincoln. He was known as a copperhead. Anyway.
So if you're against the war, are you like, hey, I don't think there should be slaves, and I think this war is a waste of time and money? Or are you like, there shouldn't be a war because owning people's tops?
Well, they were splintered. Well, they were splintered because there were people that believed in keeping the Union, and there were people that believed in abolition, right? But those two weren't always mutually exclusive, right? So some people were like, let them succeed, let them be their own country. And some people were like, well, no, we need a union, so we need a war, And some people like McClellan, who was one of Lincoln's generals, he ran for president, and he was like, let's reach a compromise about this war. Let's figure something out. And a lot of people were like, yeah, all these dead Union soldiers are looking for a compromise, pal, because he was like one of Lincoln's most fucking inept generals. One day we'll talk about McClellan.
Regular General Lee,
I'm sure he's got a statue somewhere.
Yeah. Lee was less inept as a general and just more a piece of shit as a human being.
I was talking about the Revolutionary War one.
Oh, yeah.
I fucked that up. I was like, oh, there was another more famous Lee that I forgot about.
Now, in New York, though, the war was proving to be massively unpopular. A lot of the Irish were sent to war, and they were coming back either dead or just totally maimed and mangled and shit. Whatever patriotic zeal they had after Fort Sumter had since dried up by seeing all of this shit. The reality of war. This is the reality of war.
They're coming back like, the good news is I don't ever want to have a drink again. The bad news is, have you guys heard about morphine?
Right.
Because I don't have a leg anymore, but I can't get enough of this morphine.
Yeah. Probably not on the. They probably didn't use morphine on Irish troops.
Oh.
Probably not.
They're like somehow too white and not white enough.
Yeah. I mean, it goes deep. But the way the way they saw it, they were like, how come we again are in the front? They go, all right, you go in front, you go first. And they're like, we got these incompetent generals like McClellan leading us into these fucking slaughters, and what the fuck? And like the really costly victory of Gettysburg was like hardly, like it landed with a thud in New York. Like it was hardly a victory for them. Like they were like, shit ton of people died. Like that's a victory? That's the way they saw it. That's the way they saw it.
It's a bloodbath.
Yeah, it was a bloodbath though. Now, after numerous warnings about the violence that could erupt after another draft in New York City, because Lincoln still needed more soldiers, multiple people said, if you do another draft, dude, they're not going to take it, dude. They're going to burn some shit down if you do that. Yeah. And another one was held anyway. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. July 13th, 1863, a mostly Irish mob formed and began to riot, burned huge chunks of the city, looted, that kind of thing. They actually looted a gun manufacturer that was selling guns to the Union side. Because they blamed African Americans for the war and basically for the war, they targeted African Americans and lynched multiple people from like Poles and stuff. They burnt down a black orphanage. And it was horrible. It went on for 4 days of this chaos. The governor, who was a Democrat, Horatio Seymour, he shows up, and he's like, fuck, and like the mayor, who's a Republican, is like, I had to leave, dude. They're mad at Republicans right now.
They're gonna get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
Did you see those guys back there? They were so mad.
Yeah. Wow. What was? Hold on. What was his name?
So is this
John
the riot?
Updike. John Updike was the New York mayor at the time.
Is this the riot from Gangs of New York?
Yes, it is. It's the draft, New York draft riots. We actually talked about this a little bit in our Blackwell's episode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is the riot. Yes, this is the same one. And so he came in and they're trying to figure out what to do. And Horatio Seymour, he figures out that like, these guys, these are my constituents, that are doing this. Maybe they'll listen to me,
Oh, he's about to get poisoned by his constituents.
He's got a touch consumption.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, the New York troops were moved out of New York at this time, so the city was actually completely undefended when this happened. They really didn't have anyone to fight any of this.
Like, I sure hope they don't riot when we... They're like, well, we'll draft them and then they'll protect the city.
Yeah. So Horatio Seymour, he decides he's going to go out and he's gonna stand up and he's going to speak to the people. So he goes down. A small entourage follows him. Police, armed guards, they show up with him, and he gives this speech. My friends, I'm going to tell Lincoln to stop this draft, and I'm going to work with you, and this is unconstitutional, and he's going to have to figure it out in the courts and all this stuff. Put down the guns. Everyone put all this shit away, and people clapped and listened, and it kind of petered out.
Not bad, Seymour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he kind of made them the same sort of speech all over the city. And among the people that were with him and his entourage was Big Bill Tweed. And a smaller, wiry man named Abraham Oakey Hall. And we're going to talk about him more on the next episode, Oakey Hall.
Wait,
they were basically Hall? With him. Huh?
Like, I don't know. Sorry, Hall & Oates is where my head went there.
Oh, yeah. He used to sign his name OK.
Okie Hall.
Okie Hall. Yeah, people love that guy.
People loved Hall & Oates.
He was a nice guy. Everyone, like, all accounts, everyone loved that dude. Anyway, so, they're getting a handle on this, but the problem is that when Lincoln found out that the fucking New York governor was going around being like, you don't have to listen to the draft, fuck that, I'm gonna tell Lincoln this is unconstitutional, he was furious. And he's like, no, we need a draft. We need soldiers. Right fucking now. You listen to me, or I swear to God, I will declare martial law in New York City, and we will do the draft that way, at gunpoint. You know what I mean?
Jesus.
Yeah. He wasn't fucking around.
If I was Seymour, I'd just be like, you tell him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I fucking quit.
Yeah.
This city does not have a mayor anymore because I don't want to die.
Governor.
No, I thought it was the mayor talking to the governor.
No.
No, it's the governor talking to Lincoln.
The governor's Horatio Seymour. The mayor of New York City.
He fucked off, right?
Well, he hid. John Updike.
Okay, Updike was the mayor. Seymour was the
Yeah.
governor. Okay,
Yeah.
my bad.
Yeah. Updike fucked off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is Updike was a Republican, right? So he saw eye to eye with Lincoln. And, of course, their governor, which trumps the mayor, right?
Yeah.
He was a Democrat. And all the aldermen were all Democrats as well.
Mm-hmm.
So when it came down to actually figuring out what the fuck they were going to do for the draft, they all were just in a deadlock. None of them could figure anything out as far as that went. You know what I mean? They were like, what can we do? Like, we need to figure out a plan fast. And, like, they are accusing each other of, like, either shortchanging the federal government by, like, paying a bunch of money to, like, not have the draft, or, like, just giving an easy out, to not have any soldiers or anything like that. They're all accusing each other of these things. So they needed a plan, and they needed one quickly.
Oh,
so
real
this
quick,
guy...
go
ahead.
Before we continue, you did mention Democrats and Republicans, and I'd like to reiterate for the 1,000,000th time on this podcast, during this period in time, the platform and ideals of the Democrat and Republican Party, they were completely different parties. Completely different parties with completely different platforms. They are not the Democrat or Republican Party that you know today.
No.
So,
and the way to make it most apparent is to look up their stances on tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
Look that up, because that has defined the Democratic and Republican Party forever. And anyway, there used to be an old saying too. Like, when we talk about these Northern Democrats, we're kind of talking about Tammany Democrats. That'll become clear here in a second. And the Southern Democrats, there was a saying around this time, right after the war, that, not every Democrat was a Confederate, but every Confederate was a Democrat, right? And that's why no Democrat won the office until Grover Cleveland, right?
Mm-hmm.
We actually Ron Paul loves, by the way.
Anyway. Oh no, I was gonna say we kind of discussed. Didn't we discuss the difference between the Southern Democrats and the Tammany Democrats in the
Tale of Two Elections?
Tale of Two Elections.
And we're talking about it again here too, because it's relevant once again. So two people that did see eye to eye were Bill Tweed and a fellow by the name of Orson Blunt. Blunt, he was a Republican, and he was a gun manufacturer that sold guns to the Union. Cool. And he saw his plant get ransacked and looted. And they both basically didn't want another New York riot, right? Mm-hmm. So they got together and they met behind closed doors, because that's what you did back in the day, and that's what kind of Billy Tweed was used to, and that's what he was good at.
He likes to be in the room where it happens.
Exactly,
the room where it
exactly.
happens.
Yeah. They figured out this plan and then called an emergency meeting of all the aldermen. The thing is Tammany and the aldermen, they couldn't really do anything about draft law. They would have to take it to the Lincoln administration, pitch the idea, which was going to be difficult because Lincoln was a motherfucking hardliner. That was going to be hard to try to compromise with Lincoln. So they picked basically Blunt and Tweed to go in secret to DC because, again, there's a war on and Union's not doing very well at this time, and pitch the idea to Lincoln's war ministers. The idea was fairly simple, okay? Police, fire, and state militiamen were all exempt from the draft, okay? They protected home, right? They stayed home and protected it while the war was on, right? Then a city bond was set up that you could buy and sell in the stock market, right? Big bond was set up that would pay replacement soldiers for anyone who, for whatever reason, didn't want to go, right? So they would go and find a replacement, pay him $300, and he gets to go in, right? Because his name didn't come up in the draft, right? But they found somebody willing to do so, right? To take the money and see what happens, right? And the whole city would have this fund, and that way the government doesn't get shortchanged, and Lincoln still gets its soldiers, right?
This feels very corruptible.
Oh yeah,
Big time.
Oh yeah, big time. But I mean, even things from top down, everything in the Civil War Union effort, at least on the Union side, was insanely corrupt. Like people would straight up buy like sell diseased horses, guns that wouldn't work to the army, like shit like that. People would do that all the time, you know what I mean? Or just orders of shit that just never showed up, you know? There was a ton of graft, you know? That's what they called it, graft, you know? Yeah. The poor also, you know, they had some sort of relief. You know, poor and destitute, they had some sort of relief, right? From now you have to go and die, right? So everyone was happy, right, at this. And even, you know, all the newspapers at the time, they lauded this as just such a great compromise, right? And Lincoln found a friend in New York, which he didn't have one before, a pro-Union friend. You know, you didn't have to be totally pro-Lincoln in Lincoln's mind. You at least had to be pro-Union, right?
You want to have some stuff in common.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, I don't like you and you don't like me, but...
I like you.
Yeah. Okay. You like me, but I don't like you.
Definitely do not like you.
Yeah. So with Tammany vouching for the draft and sort of running it now, because they pitched it to Lincoln and or not Lincoln, but his war ministers, and they bought it, you know. So with them vouching for the draft, when they brought in extra soldiers and extra cops, you know, to protect the city in case another riot broke out, it was all unnecessary. You know, everyone was like, oh, no, this works out equitable for us too. So like all, you know, crowds would gather around and watch the wheel spin and have them pick out names and stuff, name after name. And on the first day, actually, they span the wheel, you know, a few times, you know, and it landed on none other than William M. Tweed. And everyone laughed, right? Because Bill Tweed, he could pay the $300 himself, you know, and stay out, you know, which is exactly what he did, you know. But everyone laughed but it gave it legitimacy. They were like, well, if you know, Tweed can be picked, then we know it's on the up and up, you know. Yeah. Everyone loved it. Republicans, Democrats alike. They lauded him. They thought, oh, this guy right here, this guy is a guy that gets things done. When all the arms of government are just locked, you know, your city council, your mayor, your governor, when nothing can be done, we got this guy. You know,
he's gonna drain the swamp.
Yeah, right, right.
I like it.
Yeah. And Tweed, of course, in the public consciousness, and he would be outside shaking hands. He had his pulse on the constituents. He knew what people wanted, you know. That was probably like his best thing he had. People knew that he was a friend of the immigrants, now a friend of the Union, and a guy that can get shit done. And you know, a lot of people, they can't exactly pinpoint when they started calling him Boss Tweed, but it's probably around here where people started calling him Boss Tweed.
You know, actually, from a comparison standpoint, it sounds like the kind of reputation that he's building is kind of similar to, like, you know, like the head of like a cartel in Colombia, or like, you know, it's like, yeah, he's a bad guy and we know that he's corrupt, but like he helps us out.
Yeah.
So like,
well, that's yeah, and that was very real, because like they would give them, you know, their constituents in the 7th Ward, you know, they'd give them coal in the wintertime, you know, food, like all sorts of. They would listen, like actually be on the street and listen to people. Not a lot of people did that in New York City at this time. And so like, when the thing is was he all bad? No. Was he all good? Absolutely not. But like the point is like, when I grew up, or you know, when I was growing up, and in you know, public school, they were like, William Tweed bad, Thomas Nast good. And we're going to talk about Thomas Nast in the next episode. But it's like, no, the truth is actually way more complicated than that. You know, like Tweed wasn't all bad. And there's a lot of shit that you can't actually prove about Tweed. Did he do it? Almost certainly he did it. You know, but there was some shit that he did that was pretty fucking great. A lot of construction projects that got done, you know, through, you know, a grin and a shake of the hand and a slap on the back, you know, and some money in the pocket, you know what I mean? And he kept, you know, some off the top, you know.
Some infrastructure, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, a lot of shit like that got done because of him. And I'm not trying to apologize for him. I'm just saying that, you know, that's how it was. Even the New York Times at this point, the newspaper that would try to bring him down, was pro-Tweed. That old rag, the New York Sun, said that they wanted to build a statue of Boss Tweed.
wow.
And he was like, no, please, no. Statues are not for the living, you know, that kind of thing, you know. Even Horace Greeley's New York Tribune said nice things at this time about William Tweed.
He's flying high.
Yeah. Now that would all change, of course, after the war was over, and there was a man that was a cartoonist, one of the most famous newspaper cartoonists of his day, Mr. Thomas Nast. When everybody found out exactly what was going on, that would be his ultimate downfall. And that's a crazy story. And that, my friends, I'm going to save for part 2 of Boss Tweed.
Oh, hell yeah.
Before we wrap up, my big question for you.
Yeah.
Did Thomas Nast know Rube Goldberg? No, wait, that was too far apart.
Way too far apart.
Did he know fucking Bat Masterson?
No. Also too far apart.
I feel like, wouldn't those be pretty close?
Fairly close.
Do you think somebody who knew Bat Masterson knew Thomas Nast?
Oh, absolutely.
So there's a connector tissue there.
There's connective tissue, for sure. For sure. Roscoe Conkling is going to show up again.
Oh, heck yeah.
With his lemon.
Yeah. And also, in an odd way, Ranald Slidell Mackenzie. Remember who that was? He was the guy that fought Quanah Parker.
Oh, yeah.
In a really odd way, he's going to show back up. And not directly, but he's going to show back up again. It was just something I saw, and I was like, wait, what?
You got it, man.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Okie Hall, which is great.
Okie Hall, Hall & Oates, and the rest.
We're going to actually go back to Blackwell's.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Season.
It's a bonkers story.
HistoryBoiz cinematic universe.
Yeah.
The HistoryBoiz cinematic universe.
Yeah.
It's just because it's all real. It's all real stuff.
It's
and
all real
people
stuff.
that happen.
It's the one,
Yeah, we didn't make this up.
Yeah.
It's the story we're writing of our own invention.
If we wrote it, there'd be a lot more full frontal nudity and kung fu scrolls of magic. Or wait, no, I'm sorry. If I was doing the storytelling and it was from, and we were making it up, I was making it up. There'd be the nudity in the scrolls.
You wouldn't have to. You wouldn't have to take long convincing me to put those scrolls of kung fu magic in there.
There would be like a hard-boiled scene where a guy jumps through the air shooting 2 guns at once.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, it's the only way to get around those magics.
Yeah. Nothing could beat a Kamehameha like a guy jumping through the air with 2 guns. Nobody's ever tried it as far as I've seen. So,
speaking loosely of which, our poll is up on our Discord.
That's right, it is.
Ooh.
If you are a member of our Discord, on Patreon Pal, as low as $1 a month, you can vote on the next listener submission episode that we do. We're only doing 4 at a time, and I'm going to change that up. I'm going to change which ones are involved each time to make it fun. But yeah, get on there and vote. It'll be on. Let's see. How long do you think voting should go? It'll probably be on at least until.
And then we'll swap it.
I'll do whatever's picked. Whatever's picked after this series.
Yeah.
After this series.
Okay. There you go.
And yeah, just whenever that is, I guess. We'll cut that off.
You can vote now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get up there and vote. Do that.
Yeah. Rock the
voice
vote.
Heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let freedom ring.
Vote her down, motherfucker.
Yeah. Or pay somebody to vote for you.
You can do that. I don't know.
I mean, you could do that
Multiple times.
I mean,
that's
because you're still letting them use the Discord that you have access to as a Patreon patron, so it doesn't really matter to us.
That's up to you. I don't give a shit.
And you're gonna listen to the resulting episode either way if you're already on the Discord. So
I don't know if there's a way to scam anybody on that. I'm sorry.
No one's getting scammed.
Yeah.
So.
Which is good.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
You're scamming yourself, if anything.
Yeah, right.
All right, everybody, that is our show. Thank you for listening. Again, you know who we are. We are the History Boys. I am Christopher Whedon, and I am one of the titular boys, if you will.
Titular.
I am also a history boy. My name's Tyler Armentrout. And if you liked this episode, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, anywhere that has reviews. You give us a thumbs up if you listen to us on YouTube. It is the least efficient way to listen to this audio-only podcast. But if you do, if you're one of the 5, thank you.
No, we have more than that.
I know.
We have more than that.
I know. More people watch than actually give us the thumbs up. So you know what? If you're going to take the time to listen on YouTube, just give us the thumbs up, guys.
Yeah.
Additionally, if you like us a lot and you want to support us, you can, give us $1 on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You get access to the Discord where we hop on there, chat. Jerry drops cool pics from, every episode's topic. For as little as $5 a month, you get access to History Boys Presents the Tyler Armentrout Project featuring Christopher Whedon. It's a kind of history spin-off show where we revisit old episodes, very hangout vibe, super chill. So it's a little something extra in there, and then $10 a month you get access to all of the additional content. We got interviews, all the back episodes of the Patreon show that Chris and I do. So you get a ton of stuff that way too. But $1 a month, or just like us on the thing. Leave us a comment in there, or shoot us an email at historyboyspodcast@gmail.com. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you want to see, and we'd love to hear from you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes, and I am Jerry Nash, your humble history boy, as always. Again, thank you so much for listening. We love our listeners, even if you're one of those listeners that never sends us an email, never gives us any money, doesn't follow us on social media. You're my type of person. You're the silent listener. I like you.
We love you, lurkers.
And I care about you. Yes, indeed. I know we have many of those. I know we do. And I'm just here telling those people, even if you do nothing, it means more important. It's more important to me that you just listen to the show. So thank you as well.
Yeah, that's number one. If you're doing that,
Yes.
you're already above and beyond.
Indeed. Thank you so much. And let's see, Mr. Chris.
Oh, love you, bye.
We'll see you next time. For I guess we won't forever.